So this one here goes out to the people who really just don't care about voting, especially the African American people who just really don't care about voting. Once upon a time in Black entrepreneur history, there was an African American man named George A. Elmore. He was a businessman and also a civil rights activist who gained African Americans the right to vote in the primaries in the state of South Carolina. And you know what this led to? The right of African Americans to participate in primary elections nationwide. So George Elmore, he was born in 1905 in the city of Holly Hill, South Carolina. He became a serial businessman. He owned several businesses, retail stores, taxi cab business. He'd even become a photographer by the 1950s. And all these businesses he opened up in Richland County, Columbia, South Carolina. But there was a problem. In 1946, he and other African Americans were not allowed to vote in the primaries, in the South Carolina Democratic primaries. So what did he do? He brought a lawsuit because black people were not allowed to vote for the Congress people, right? Because it was only open to white people. It was strictly whites only. Yeah, you got the year right, 1946. Now, this had already been established as racial discrimination according to the Constitution. Let me look. Title 8 USCA Section 31, which was written in the newspapers, that stated that race, color, or previous condition may not affect the right to vote. Now, see, here's the problem. South Carolina governorship didn't want to follow that little law or whatever. So they fought against that freaking law. They were like, whatever, we're not going to follow whatever the freaking Constitution says, right? So they decided they were going to alter the South Carolina state law, situating it more as a quote unquote club. Because if it's a club, they don't have to follow laws and regulations. Well, that didn't work, okay? Because guess what? They were in court. And this landmark case was called ELMORE versus Rice. You can go look it up on blackentrepreneurs.com. And it was in 1947 that George A. Elmore won the case with the help of his fantastic lawyers and that fantastic judge whose name is Judge Waring. It was this landmark decision that gave African Americans the right to vote in the primaries across the nation. Now, the very next year after George Elmore won his lawsuit, 30,000 African Americans voted. But listen to this. Whatever happened to all the white people who did not want black people to vote in the Democratic primaries? Guess what they did? They bounced. They left the Democratic Party and went into the Republican Party. Yeah, this happened in 1947. So all those people who wanted to block African Americans from voting, yeah, they went over into the Republican Party. Didn't I just say that? I said that. I'll just repeat that. Yeah, they went over into the Republican Party. Now, Mr. George Elmore, he was so happy, and I'm going to read a quote he left in the newspapers, the state newspaper of 1950. This is certainly a most gratifying sight to me. I lined them up, and it's a pleasure to me to see them allowed to vote. Yes, I am George Elmore. I was the plaintiff in the case before Judge Waring, a case which threw open the Democratic primary to colored voters. I was the first colored Democrat allowed to vote since those who voted for General Wade Hampton. I and Judge Waring made possible this voting. I was the plaintiff and Mr. Waring was the judge. End quote. So yeah, this was not an easy win. Although he's celebrating, this was not an easy win for him because he and his family were attacked viciously by white supremacists. They attacked his businesses, they destroyed it, vandalized it, they just did the works, okay? They went to his home, they harassed him, even the banking systems, and even the people where he would order his products from, the wholesalers, they wouldn't supply his stores with anything anymore. And this led to his family having to move away from their home and even file for bankruptcy. Yeah, he had 4 children and a wife he had to take care of who had a breakdown from all the attacks. Now, Mr. George Elmore, he passed away in 1959, and this is what the tombstone reads. Sacred to the memory of George Elmore, who through unmatched courage, perseverance, and personal sacrifice brought the legal action by which black people may participate in South Carolina Democratic Party elections. Elmore versus Rice, 1947. And that is the life story of civil rights leader George Elmore. So for all the people, all the African American people out here who's saying that, our votes don't matter, don't vote, don't vote, don't vote, that's a slap in the face. What you need to do is vote. Vote in the midterms, vote in your state elections, because the president needs backup. If you vote for a Democratic president, he needs Democrat backup in the states, or that Democratic president won't be able to get anything passed because there are Republicans in the Congress blocking it. Mr. George Elmore knew this. He needed a representation in his state. So don't just go out here voting for president. You need to vote for your Congress people in your state, black people. Because getting just a Democratic president in the office without his backup to pass the legislation that he needs to pass, it simply won't get done. He needs you to vote in each state and flip these states Democrat.